Welcome onto another episode, all. It has been a while since I spoke about the channel Fathering Autism, with two parents, Asa Maass and Asa Maass, who exploit their daughter, who has multiple disabilities, and in doing so, in their actions, they have physically abused their daughter, and still do so this day. Allow me to explain how. First of all, Asa Maass and Asa Maass, because of all the child exploitation, their family vlogs, they do not have any education in neurology, biology, physiology, emotional well-being, or anything else which goes on beneath our surface, on the inside of us. So he has no idea about hormones or anything that goes through our system. So he does not know about all of the disabilities, disorders, diseases, comorbidities that his actions can cause his daughter. Due to his lack of education about humans, as he was originally a mechanic before he began his family vlogging. Because he family vlogs day after day, he clearly does not have the time to educate himself about autism and other disabilities and comorbidities related to autism, such as sensory processing disorder, for example. And because he does not know about these things, he is not aware that he is actually physically harming his daughter. So, on one of his videos, I saw him take his daughter to a shopping centre, a full-sized one, entirely full, with a camera pointing at her. And first of all, pointing the camera at her and child exploitation in general is unacceptable, especially when they know the child cannot give consent, does not have the ability to do so. So in the shopping centre, when we go there, we see that their daughter, Abigail, is extremely overstimulated. This is the reasons of why she does things like repetitive behaviours, why she tries to run away in the shopping store, why she goes and lays down on the ground. All these, what they call bad behaviours, which they call, are actually coping mechanisms in order to prevent the harm, such as, say, when it comes to hair stimming, for example, they don't want her stimming in a shopping centre, out in public. So they'll go telling you, oh, ABA's done great for our daughter. But, nah. ABA does not do great for anyone. ABA, all it does is changes behaviour. There is no health included. The emotional well-being and so on. None of that is acknowledged, and that is extremely harmful. As according to university studies, such as recent study in the University of Kent here in the UK, they tested autistic people who experienced ABA, and so many autistic people who did not go through ABA, who have not experienced it. And what they come to find is that actually anyone, not just autistic people, but anyone who goes through applied behaviour analysis is 86% more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is one way how he is already abusing his daughter mentally, by the trauma that he puts inside of her. Trauma does not have to be some big kind of event. They can be very small things that stay within us. They stay within our memories and continually really hurt and mess us up. But those, first of all, that's one problem with it, of how he uses ABA on Abigail. Because even though ABA therapists don't like to acknowledge it, ABA is abuse, behaviourism in general. And if ABA was the best method, as they claim, why would scientists and psychologists, physiologists, and people who work on other disciplines to do with the human experience, Why would they feel the need to come up with anti-ABM methodology? Ones which don't involve behaviourism, but ones which are to do with things like neuroscience, biology, the physiology itself, child psychiatry, of how to, child development. None of this is included in ABA. None of it. All ABA cares about is what's on the surface. So, concerning overstimulation, autistic individuals, they can get very easily stimulated by their surroundings, everything around them. One of the first things I'll have to cover is that all of us as humans, we are interconnected. Our brains, our minds are not independent operators that function by themselves. Our brains and minds are actually linked to each other. It's been even discovered now that in things like trees that make communals, communicate with each other through electronic impulses, and they make alliances with alternative species, as have we. We have an alliance with green life. We would not survive if we did not have green life, and green life would not survive if it did not have us. So we have made an alliance with each other to contribute to the survival of our species. But again, Asa knows nothing about this. So on the overstimulation, so some of you who don't know so much about autism, but have just read things from clinical and medical assumptions, most likely don't understand so many of the behaviours. For example, say when an autistic child starts doing something like that, these repetitive stimming behaviours. They do these because autistic people and other people who are considered neurodivergent often have less of a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which is here in the front of the brain. They often lack it, and by lacking it, it leaves them under-stimulated. And this is why it's called stimming, because stimming stimulates. So, by being understimulated, they stim more to get the dopamine. So when they restrict Abigail from stimming, they disallow her to produce that dopamine that she requires, that neurotransmitter. She does not have that dopamine in the front of her brain that she requires. Dopamine is responsible for things like learning, memory, attention, concentration, and so many other things. So by not having things like concentration or attention, she can't pay attention to the things around her, but she might just walk into something, just jump in a pool and then not realise. So this is first of all one way. And when individuals do get overstimulated and so on, when it causes all this pain in the head, all the pain it's causing inside of Abigail's head, and that's why she always wants to calm down, why she wants to pause or run away. She's trying to escape from all this overstimulation. She is. But by Asa and Priscilla going, physically grabbing her and holding her there, that's abuse. First of all, this even results in further problems such as not having body autonomy. And this is the reason why the vast majority of autistic females especially, autistic girls, and Abigail is a girl, as you know, what this results in is the increased probability of sexual abuse by not having body autonomy. So her parents, Asa and Priscilla, have taught Abigail that she's got to let everyone else do whatever they want to do to her body. It is not her body. That is what they have taught her through this. That is one of the negative effects of applied behaviour analysis, is they destroy your body autonomy and disallow it to you. So there's more abuse that is occurring. First of all, up to now, overstimulating her is one form of abuse, disallowing the dopamine to develop, and so on up to now, and losing body autonomy, increasing the probability of sexual abuse to their own daughter. And even in their comment sections on their Facebook communities and YouTube channel, what we come to see is there's actually some people who have gone and said that they are sexually aroused by Abigail's voice, by the sounds that she makes. Not necessarily words, but when she makes noises, they say that it is sexually arousing. And then for Asa to go onto his Facebook community, the fans who have some sort of trouble that makes them get aroused by Abigail, I would never mind I wouldn't exploit a child online, I would never hire someone I don't know, especially considering the wealth that Asa and Priscilla have. If I had their wealth, I would just go straight to professionals who are actually qualified for the kind of job which I want, that I want someone to do. So if I wanted someone to do respite and care for my son or daughter if I had a child, I would actually go for someone who actually has a certification and license, so that I would know, if I were a father, I would know that it is most likely safe for this person to be with my child. I wouldn't go getting random strangers off the internet. So that's actually more abuse. And child exploitation in and of itself is abuse. Now, in individuals on the autism spectrum and across other neurodivergent disabilities, there is something called the amygdala, right near the centre of our brain, just at the top of the spine, where the spinal cord meets up with the brain. From the nervous system up your spinal cord and into the brain. Just at the top of that area, near the centre of your brain, is the amygdala. And the amygdala is what's called, in everyday language, you can describe it as a threat detector. It goes detecting danger. It detects the threats around us, which causes us the anxiety to make us worry, but we'll be more careful. So the amygdala actually plays a responsibility in our safety. But Asa Maass, by not knowing anything about neurology, biology, or anything like that, he has absolutely no idea what the amygdala is, what the amygdala does, and so on. So on some of his videos, if you're a big fan of hers, you may have seen Abigail just run and jump into the pool and possibly drown, which is what some people have called the child protection services on him. The reason autistic kids do things like just run out in front of a car, for example, is because the amygdala during their development is either underactive or overactive. If it's overactive, they get overwhelming anxiety. But if it's underactive, they seem fearless. Absolutely fearless that they'll do anything. Such as the car coming, the car comes down the road, but even though the child here sees the car coming, because the amygdala is underactivated, it does not detect the car as a threat. So, individuals like Abigail, where it's underactive, doesn't detect that danger. that she'll just run out and bang, she'll get hit by a car. And so even more that, by not acknowledging the neurological differences that we have seen in the brains of people with neurodivergent disabilities like intellectual disability, autism, and ADHD, ADD, and so on, global developmental delay. Well, I'll talk about that on a later episode. But just due to his lack of education about humans, shows that he has no idea what he's doing to his daughter. And now, say when we go on some of the activities he does inside of ABA. When he's exercising ABA on Abigail, he goes causing depression in his daughter. It causes great depression due to conditional acceptance. It sends the message to her that I'll only give you affection and attention if you do what I want you to do. I don't love you all the time. I only love you if you be who I want you to be. That's basically what he says to Abigail. Because remember, Asa Maass is a fan of ABA. By being a fan of ABA is a pseudoscience. He is. ABA is absolute nonsense altogether. He went on one of his episodes saying that children don't have rights. And applied behaviour analysis absolutely agree with him. They do not believe in the free will. ABA thinks that free will and motivation are just illusions. They think everything you do is controlled by your surroundings. You have no thoughts. Your thoughts don't affect your behaviour. Your feelings don't affect your behaviour. Your emotions don't. Your physical state doesn't. ABA is absolute nonsense. And the fact of the limitations that they don't see what's going on beneath the surface. And now, by the amygdala being underactivated and so on, what it can do is it triggers that fight or flight. The fight or flight symptom which goes on. And many negative things happen inside our bodies when this occurs. Because once again, this is for our safety. If it's telling us to make the flight, like just in the shopping store, Abigail was making the flight when she made a runner. She was making a runner for it. She was taking the flight. What happens is, when that situation occurs, it deactivates the immune system, and in the process actually even damages it. Because when you deactivate the immune system, it provides you more energy. So that you can actually have enough energy to make the runner. What it does is the anxiety reduces metabolism, which is inside of us, and by not having metabolism, the food she consumes does not turn into energy, which is why on so many you see her snacking so much. When people are in depression, it actually increases fat storage, but more of the food you consume goes into your fat storage rather than actually turning into energy. So it's even doing that to her, and that's going to lead to problems later on. And when we go back to the immune system, deactivating it too frequently, as you're not meant to be in that fight or flight situation day after day. So when we do it to it so frequently, it can cause immune deficiency. But Abigail is going to become more susceptible to sicknesses and diseases. Any kind of foreign germs, anything which is foreign to her body. If any kind of germs she hasn't been to before, get her. By immune deficiency, the immune system cannot attack the infection, cannot attack the potential cause of a disease. She can't do so. So they're already causing some damage there, And this can lead to what are called autoimmune problems, where the immune system can actually get overactive, then it will attack the body too much, sending what's called inflammation. Where inflammations actually get sent to the areas, like say if you've got a cut somewhere, accidentally cut yourself or something, metabolism will go to that area by your immune system, you'll get more white blood cells there, and with the inflammation going there, it's repairing that injury. So sending this inflammation goes out and so on. So by it being overactive, she's got too much inflammation going around when he does this to her. Because the nervous system, it's very complicated, it's very complex. But what we're talking about here when we say autoimmune is we're talking about something called the autonomic nervous system, which is put into two branches, where one of them is where you make the fight or flight, referred to as the sympathetic nervous system, and the other one is where they often go about rest and digest. Once they've made the flight, that's the time to rest, get your breath back, and restart. Get all that threat that you're feeling out. Because as you're making the runner and so on, you breathe more quickly, you blink more, so many other actions go on, like adrenaline is released into your system. So many other things go on. The heartbeat increases, your heart rate, which can cause breathing problems in the long run. And with the adrenaline going through your bloodstream, since the bloodstream goes through the entire body, they're sending adrenaline from the adrenal gland just above there. They're sending that all through our body, causing blood clots. So they've actually already done this to her, causing blood clots, and it damages blood vessels, which can lead to infections inside her blood in the long run. That, once again, is physical abuse. Because of the heart rate consistently going up and staying high, blood pressure going up all the time, this can cause heart problems. And according to the World Health Organization, the most common cause of people's death is a heart disease. Heart disease is seen to be the number one cause of people's deaths today, apparently. And these heart diseases can be caused by mental health issues, such as where I've mentioned anxiety. So forcing Abigail to do these things which are not even necessary, and so on, it actually does cause physical harm to her, especially on the inside. They've tried making Abigail make particular bondages, but applied behaviour analysis is not the right way, because we have another hormone inside of ourselves called oxytocin. But autistic individuals, those on the spectrum, tend to lack this oxytocin as well. We have less of it compared to the majority of people. And oxytocin is a hormone that is responsible for making bondages. And this can be one of the causes of the difficulties of bonding with other people that autistic people have. It can cause trouble with bondage. And this is why there's an alternative intervention called DIR floor time, which is all about relationships. It's all to do with building a relationship. It's far healthier. It uses what's called intrinsic motivation, which again is more superior than extrinsic motivation. So DIR floor time is actually greater and better than applied behaviour analysis, confirmed by a science team called Psychological Bulletin. Psychological Bulletin goes round and it looks at all the sciences that are going on, because it goes to look at what's the quality of the science. It goes to give judgments of what quality does it have at this time. But ABA, the results are absolutely devastating. the way I said psychological bulletin. And what this team said was that out of all the reviews, the peer reviews and so on, out of all the behavioural plans, they said that ABA is so poorly conducted that it is not even worthy of being included in a data analysis, but it does not even meet the merits of a promising approach. There's been studies in other areas which show that ABA is no better than any other way. So you would get the same result whether you did ABA to your child or not. You would get the same result. You wouldn't get a better result for doing ABA, but doing ABA, doing all this physical damage on the inside, is just more abuse that Asa has done to his daughter. He even says on his channel, oh, we don't know everything about autism, oh, we don't know this, we don't know that. So he's actually even confessed he is not educated in these areas, that he has not done research on them or anything. I've researched autism and other disabilities for over 25 years. Yes, there's a very lot to learn concerning disabilities and humans, about the human experience. There is so much, and then don't forget, more gets discovered, so you've got more to learn, even though you've already learned so much. So by Asa ignoring all of these discoveries about the human experience, about autism itself, how it influences and affects our bodies, all the environmental signals, because this is one of the problems with the medical model, is the medical model, even though we are all interconnected, we're not independent operating systems functioning in isolation. The medical model treats you in isolation. It does not deal with the environmental signals around you. Autism is primarily a genetic condition, is what we know up to now. And your genes, if there were no environmental factors, your genes would not function at all. Whatsoever. Our genes would not function because our genes are actually answering to the environment around us. So Asa ignoring all the environments, the situations, the circumstances that put his daughter in pain. It is just plain abusive. So where he says, oh, ABA is not abusive, it absolutely is, and it always will be, because of the core of the theory. The core of the theory is based upon what they call positive reinforcement, which is basically rewarding, rewarding someone to make them do it again. Negative reinforcement, which is basically threaten someone. Say like, oh, I'll do this to you if you whatever. And there's extinction, they call it, which is basically ignorance. Just ignore them. It'll make them, oh, stop attention seeking. And then the fourth one, punishment, where you'll do something bad to them to try and make them not do it again. That's basically the core of ABA, of operant conditioning. But we see that all four of these fundamental assumptions are very problematic and backfire. The vast majority of autistic children go through ABA. So if ABA is so effective and makes people independent, why is it that over 80% of autistic adults are unemployed? And most of them actually unemployable, that an employer is not allowed to employ them. Why is that if ABA is so successful? Why do the majority of them not reach their potential? Because ABA is not the success it claims it is. And connect an article to this by someone who used to be a board certified behaviour analyst, BCBA, where she says, I'm a disillusioned BCBA, because ABA puts illusions all over you as parents. If you're the parent of an autistic child, they just put illusions right in front of you. Altogether, anyone actually educated in psychology knows that all these things like rewards actually make your child more selfish, more arrogant, but it sends the children the opposite direction all the time. Such as when you reward them, including praise them, for example, what they do is no longer about the task itself, it's about the reward. And the more they get rewarded for doing it, the more likely they lose interest in what they do to get the reward. Negative reinforcement is basically the opposite side. Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, they are two sides of the same coin. But negative reinforcement actually causes dishonesty, that you'll make your child be very dishonest. So not only is he negatively affecting his daughter physically, he's actually negatively affecting her behaviour. She would be dishonest due to the negative reinforcement. And you get ABA therapists saying, oh, we don't use negative reinforcement. Withholding from her something that she likes, that's a punishment. That's negative reinforcement altogether. So it is a punishment both ways. And when it comes to punishments, where things like, say, where you might say, oh, if you don't do this, don't do that, I'll ground you. You're grounded, you won't be allowed to play out. Or you won't be allowed to go on your game console and things like that. When you do that, that actually makes your child even more inclined to do the behaviour you're punishing them for. So if your child was being violent, if you punished your child for the violence, your child will enjoy the violence even more. They will want to be violent even more than they already are. It will not reduce the aggression, it increases it. Just as B.F. Skinner said. That's what B.F. Skinner pointed out, which is why if you look up his actual beliefs, he was always against punishment. He never supported it. It was all Asa Maass, the founder of ABA, who chose to contradict B.F. Skinner in operant conditioning and decided to do punishments like electronic shocks. So, all these things that Asa Maass does, due to his ignorance of the human experience, his ignorance of the human condition, his ignorance of things like meltdowns. On one of his videos, I saw him saying, when he was talking about ABA, he was going to say, there's no antecedent. There's no antecedent to a meltdown. That greatly illustrates how uneducated he is. There certainly is what they call antecedents. An antecedent, if you're not aware, is basically a more stylish way of saying cause of. So many ABA therapists say that it's harder to learn the language, their vocabulary, than to actually do the therapy. What does that say about ABA therapy? If it's harder to learn a bit of language, obviously they don't make it very difficult whatsoever. So doing all of this to Abigail, all the ABA, taking her to environments that are not suitable, the meltdowns actually do have an antecedent altogether. Because, again, where I said he doesn't know about neurology, one of the neurological differences in an autistic brain is it lacks a filter. There's so much irrelevant information that you sense with your physical senses. It comes in, and then you process it. And all the irrelevant information just filters out of you. But in autistic individuals, by that filter being more narrow, all that information stays in. It stocks up, piles up, and it keeps increasing. It's not falling out. So when he takes her to places like shopping centres, big crowds that she's uncomfortable around, causing her anxiety, overstimulating her, it goes Brennebears. As I mentioned, the environmental signals, your genes would not function with no environmental signals. So I'm sending all of these at her. It's building up, and eventually, bam. That's why it appears to be random, because it builds up. It's not a sudden reaction to one thing. It's the reaction, the result of lots of trauma. So the fact that she has meltdowns shows that he has been very ignorant of his daughter's internal state, of what's going on the inside, which once again is physical abuse. It's physically abusive. So where we go claiming, we're not abusing our daughter. Priscilla's very ignorant of her daughter and does not have a relationship. And that is also extremely damaging on the internal state. That causes diseases. It is, where we've got this gender inequality and so on going on, these different rights between males and females. The laws of our countries used to be dominated by religions. And the UK here and the US were both dominated by Christianity. So it gives this rather religious belief that mothers are meant to nurture the children. And there's actually scientific evidence behind this. Because what we come to see is, in science, females tend to have a higher amount of that oxytocin that I spoke about. The one responsible for making bondages. So mothers can tend to bond with their children more easily. But Priscilla refuses to, and ignoring your daughter or son or all your children, that is actually emotional abuse. Once again, that damages the internal state of the human experience. Why are all children attention seekers? Don't they all seek attention? They don't seek attention for nothing, they seek it because they need it. That attention is a need. So by them doing ABA, just being plain ignorant of her, ignoring all of her needs and so on, well, pretending that they're ignoring her, that tells Abigail, my parents don't care. They don't care, they've just been so ignorant towards me. They don't care about me. As ABA says, behaviour is communication. So everything that Asa and Priscilla do is sending a message to Abigail. Emotionally offensive ones, and then their behaviour, physically offensive behaviours. So those you claiming that Asa and Priscilla love their daughter, well, they possibly do, but it certainly doesn't appear that way. So just someone who loves their daughter would not go doing things that they're not educated to do. And concerning the mother and daughter, the mother and son kind of relationship again, Priscilla actually goes calling someone who's not her daughter, the daughter, and calls Abigail a best friend. Who would claim that someone who's not your child to be your child, and someone who your child met who's a friend, why would you call them the daughter instead? That's disgraceful. To do that to your own children. So, yes, Asa Maass and Priscilla Maass, first of all, with the child exploitation, are abusive parents. They are indeed abusive. The people who report them to the Child Protection Services, whoever that is, it does get kept anonymous. Whoever it is probably doesn't know about all this neurology as well, because not everyone studies neurology when they leave school. Neurology is not something you do there. And the Child Protection Services, they're not neurologists. They're not educated in neurology. It's so difficult. But then with autistic people, ADHD, Down syndrome, and so on, because our brains function in an even different way, less related, the neurology courses are usually about the way the majority of brains work. Not about the way, say, like my autistic brain is less related. So, by it being less related, such as where I've spoken of the amygdala, they could do a neurology course, but by not knowing about the neurological differences in autistic people, but they would make the same mistake. So even the Child Protection Services, if they were to do something like any kind of behavioural therapy on Abigail, by not being educated in neurology, physiology, psychology, and so on, they would not recognise the abuse that they are doing. For example, if my dad made me go through ABA, the therapists wouldn't have realised that they are actually abusing me. They wouldn't realise it. And we see them on their advertisements this day, abusing autistic kids. A lot of individuals on the autism spectrum, such as myself, we are epileptic. We have epilepsy. It makes us have epileptic seizures, which destroys and kills numerous brain cells. It causes brain damage. But because none of these lot are educated about epilepsy, they do not know that stress, anxiety, tiredness are three of the most common epileptic seizure triggers. ABA, after school and so on, can be very stressful, cause anxiety, as Asa has done to his daughter, and it can be very tiring since they've been working all day already. And they've already been working all day at school. And autistic girls, especially, actually do find it harder because of conformity. Psychology studies show that females tend to be more likely to conform than males. This tends to be due to gender expectations. Again, so social expectations going on, of how that affects someone's behaviour. That's not just the environment. So I can actually assure you all, Asa Maass, Priscilla Maass, ABA, where ABA goes pulling epileptic seizure triggers, on epileptic children, is triggering a seizure, damaging numerous blood cells and brain cells. Is that not abusive? To go damaging someone's brain by triggering epileptic attacks, when it could go into tonic-clonic seizures, when it could go into just clonic, simple focal seizures, generalised seizures, secondary generalised seizures, seizures of all kinds. Is that not abuse? So why shouldn't therapists be educated, or at least have someone who is educated about these common comorbidities to actually check, is it safe to do this to this autistic child with this disability? is it safe to do this behavioural plan? Because there is no specialist there about the disabilities. None of them are disability specialists of any kind. So they do not know that they are actually abusing children. So I can assure you all, Asa Maass and Priscilla Maass are indeed abusive parents, but possibly they maybe don't know it due to the lack of education. But then it's not very loving to go taking all these risks, where you don't know what you were doing. Where people are assuring you, saying to you that this is abusive, it's harmful. Wouldn't that make you pause and want to investigate? So if I were in Asa's shoes, if I were in his position, if I had big groups, hate groups coming at me, well, I wouldn't say they are hate groups, but if there was lots of people coming at me on my YouTube channel saying something like, oh, this is plain abusive, and so on, oh, this is harmful, I would think to myself, what do they mean? I'm not a specialist in this area or that profession. Should I learn a bit more about it first before I do it to my child? And I would say yes, I should. I should learn first. Just like I've spent nearly 25 years learning about these disabilities because I wanted to know, why am I so different to my peers? That's what I was wondering in primary school when I was a child. I could see there was something so different about me. And I kept hearing my dad say, my son's autistic, he's autistic. My son has Asperger's syndrome, oh, he's got autism. And it was really confusing me. It was. So I went to Dr. Google, began looking it up, and ever since then, that became my great interest. But I've been fixated on it, but I've got a channel involving autism. I can tell you about the harm that Asa is doing to his autistic daughter. I can tell you so much about neurology, the neurological differences, the way the genes work. That's because I've spent nearly 25 years reading books, websites and so on, following the discoveries. And how many non-autistic people stay fixated for nearly 25 years? Not many. So, anyone who does ABA on their children are performing abuse, if it is actual ABA. If it's not the actual ABA, because a lot of the clinics, they just claim they are ABA for the sake of insurance. They are not actually ABA. But Asa does actual ABA on his daughter. If you would like to know more about ABA, Applied Behaviour Analysis, you can look on the playlist of videos up to now that I've made about ABA, and you will come to see why, as soon as Asa mentions ABA on his post and so on, why people suddenly change their mind. Oh, your daughter's doing so well, complimenting Asa and Priscilla. Then as soon as I mention ABA in the title, suddenly they change their mind. It flips over. Because they know ABA is harmful. But they didn't know that Asa and Priscilla were doing ABA to help Abigail progress. But this is not actually progression, what's going on. So that's why the fans and so on suddenly change their mind as soon as ABA comes up. Because they know that ABA is harmful, but they also know there's other interventions that are not harmful that can help make the same progress. They are aware from what autistic adults and advocates have been saying. They're actually aware of the autistic voices. that they actually checked things out and they know that it is harmful, that it is suicidal, even. Autistic children are actually, because of their behaviour and some of the societal issues, societal attitudes of the way these individuals get treated, these children, university studies, depending which country the study was done in, and the participants, some have shown that autistic children are 28% more likely, not 28% only, but 28 times more likely to commit suicide, or at least especially have suicidal thoughts, all as a result of their behaviour. So I can assure unto you all, this is abuse, what Asa and Priscilla do to their daughter. All of it. If you found this episode interesting, please watch on the others. Perhaps go to some other channels who are talking about Asa Maass and Priscilla Maass and about the way they abuse their daughter, if you would like to know more. Because it's good to hear both sides of the argument. You know, it's always good to hear both sides rather than just listening to one side. So please, if you would share your thoughts in the comment sections with me, it will be very appreciated. Thank you.